Instagram also. Give me a moment. I think we're already live the rest of the social media, so we shall go live here as well. Give me a moment. Oh, and here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? We still have 3 minutes, so we're going to wait. You missed it yesterday. Yes, Pooja, we missed you. I missed you. Nobody just said trippy background, although there were people who said good background. We will start in about 2.5 minutes. As you can see, I need my specs, otherwise I have to look like this. We are going to be speaking about leadership mastery again today. And Pooja, for yesterday's session, which was, I think it was interesting. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter. Do go back and listen to the recording. You can listen to it on, you can see it on Creator, you can see it on LinkedIn, you can see it on my YouTube, my Facebook, or, everywhere the socials are. You can look it up there. So don't miss it. It was fun. It's going to take a moment. Oh, okay. And set the phone so that Instagram Live works. So, Mesh, tell me a little about yourself. Saurav, if it's the same Saurav who's been coming every day, great. Yes, thank you so much, Team Creator. We will wait for another minute for people to join in. In the meanwhile, we will just chat and say hello, hello, hello to everybody who's watching. And I'm also going to start on Instagram. Thank you, Instagram, for letting me know I'm alive. I know you said live, but I'm alive. Awesome. So, for everyone who's joining in for the first time, and for those of you who, yes, Saurav, I remember. For those of you who've met me before, you know this, you know the drill. So, if you need to grab a cup of coffee quickly, go do it. And for those of you who are joining in for the first time, my name is Shalu Bhuchar. That's Bhuchar, not Butcher. And for the longest time, that has been my introduction. Hey Zena, good to see you. Okay, so Instagram is telling me that it has been paused due to a poor connection. Thank you very much, Rain. Let's look and see if that's also going to be a problem on the phone. It might be. Guys, allow me a moment. I'm going to switch over my internet. Hello, hello. Can you guys see me, hear me? Drop me a message if you can. I'm sorry about the internet dropping off completely. Okay, great. I'm glad you can hear me, see me. But the only thing is that I can't change my background to trippy background, Pooja. It's not letting me do so. Let me see if there's any chance here. It's not showing me the background, so that's fine. We will just continue with talking about leadership mastery again today. So, we've been speaking about leadership mastery for the past few weeks, and that's what we're doing again today. But the last time, now your question might be, well, didn't we just speak about, hey Amar, hey Manveer? Yes, I dropped. I'm so sorry. Luckily, I'm in one piece. It was just the internet that dropped off. So, coming back, the last time which was Wednesday, actually, as recently as Wednesday, we spoke about the leadership from being an individual contributor to becoming a manager, and actually from the manager to being a leader. We spoke about the distinction between the two, right? Today we're going to talk about from a from the perspective of a lot of experience, from the perspective of moving upwards on the corporate ladder, etc. What does it take to actually transition from being a leader into being a senior leader? Now, what does that mean? It means being someone with a lot of experience. It means being someone who has actually created a transition from them within their mindset itself, from where they were before in terms of managing to where they came to in a little while, which was leading, and now what's the leap that they need to make, which is truly, truly leading an organization, leading a group of managers, and so on. And we'll talk about that. So, and as is usual, keep in mind that I will keep looking in three different directions, right here, a little above, and then on the right, because I'm managing devices and I'm managing the chat as well. Even if Team Creator is helping, my eyes still need to move to be able to see what they're doing and what you're asking me. So bear with that. I want to share some statistics with you guys, for all of you who are statistic lovers. When asked to rank what were the most difficult life challenges in order of difficulty, the top one is actually making a transition at work. Even before bereavement, divorce, health issues, um, how do I become, how do I take on a different role? How do I transition from one role to another? How do I transition from one level to another? So one of the things that I do is I specialize in helping people in transitions, whether it's youngsters transitioning from, oh, my life is carefree, all I need to bother about is my marks, to transitioning into, oh my God, I'm in the workplace, to transitioning into, oh my God, I'm a manager, and oh my goodness, I need to be a leader. Good question, Amar. Amar wants to know, what is the difference between a leader and a senior leader? From the perspective of experience, hey Rajan, from the experience of perspective, pardon me, from the perspective of experience, a leader is someone who will have an X amount of years of experience and will have a certain role that they are playing beyond managerialship. A senior leader is someone who's been through the paces, who's learnt a lot, who's burnt their fingers, sometimes who's just, done what needed to be done and kind of gone through the role. And then just by sheer dint of having been around in the same role or in the same organization for more than a few years, the individual kind of moves to a senior leader level. um, but right now, when we speak about leader and senior leader, this does get, remember, I'm going to take a step back. Remember last week or last session, I spoke about how there's such a clear distinction between being a manager and being a leader in terms of your mindset, in terms of how you use your skills, in terms of how you deal with people. And it's not just about your positional authority. It's actually still the same thing, but here your years of experience and the position that you bring in kind of do come into play. So there's a very thin line between being a senior leader and being a senior manager. And there I don't mean by designation. There are a lot of people who continue to move upwards in the ranks and are still just a manager in a higher positional authority. That's all. So we are going to be talking about, as a senior leader, which means someone with experience, someone who's been through the paces, and someone who brings in and adds in a lot of value to the rest of the organization, to the teams that they're working with, to the organization in itself, what does it mean to make the transition from being a leader, being a mid-level manager, being a mid-level leader to being a senior leader? So, what I was telling you about workplace transitions being one of the most difficult challenges, it's not just hearsay. It's actually a study that has been done by these people called Matt Tays and Richard Wellens. And I'm just reading my notes wherein they talk about that they've actually written something called Leaders in Transition, Stepping Up, Not Off. And this was backed by DDI, which is Development Dimensions International. They're a leadership consulting organization also. There is also another place called CEB Blogs, who have spoken about, within an entry by this lady called Kruti Barucha and Nitika Dial, in as way back as 2013, it said that their article said that 9 out of 10 teams whose leaders had a successful transition would actually meet their 3 year performance goals. The attrition was lower, the discretionary effort was higher, 2% higher is what they found. Attrition rate was 13% lower. It's a mind boggling number. And they actually ended up generating 5% more revenues and profits than average in the industry and in the world. But in organizations where leaders faced a struggle through transition, the performance of the direct reports is found to be 15% lower than it would be with high performing leaders. 15%. And their direct reports are also likely to be 20% more disengaged or to even leave the organization. Now, I understand a lot of you are um, youngsters are still studying to be leaders in the future. I feel that if you lay the foundation correctly, and if you guys already start understanding these things, that when I come to a senior leader position, both positionally and figuratively, so to speak, charismatically, trait-wise, etc., these things will make a difference. You'll already start building your mindset in a certain way. So if you were to take and extrapolate these numbers to a group within your college, within your study group, etc., that you were leading, you would be able to still extrapolate some of these numbers. They may not be the same 15%, 20%, 29%, 13%, but you'll find that if you are unable to take on a good solid handover from the person who was before you, or if you are unable to pay attention to your team's needs, if you're unable to guide them, and so on and so forth, you will find that your team, your own group, your study group will start to become disengaged and they'll start to dither out, conflict will occur, people will not want to talk to each other, and so on and so forth. So, a leadership role, if we remember, is a position of designated responsibility that does involve people management. So, there is a managerial part of it. And a lot of people often struggle transitioning into a leadership role because and this is what we spoke about the last time, was because the skills that make them great employees are not the same skills that will make them a great leader. Leadership requires one to really carefully juggle the many different roles that a leader wears: supervisor, coach, visionary, decision maker, leader, guide, friend, so many. Any leadership role is defined by people management, and the minute people are involved, all these dynamics come into play. All your dynamics like delegation, like communication, coordination, planning, monitoring of tasks and performances and deadlines, all of these things come into play. Now, what demarcates a leader, a senior leader, from a manager is that a senior leader, along with their experience, will also bring in the understanding, the knowing that it is so critical for us to coach and to develop people and to truly get work done through people in a way that people feel empowered, that the team environment, team vitality I spoke about, employee vitality I spoke about in one of the sessions, all of that is so critical and crucial for an organization to grow. Results cannot be achieved without these things being in place. And that is what a good senior leader definitely understands. They know it, they understand it, and they apply it. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat. Pardon me for the background noises. And hi, Guru Paksha. Good to see you here today. Guru Paksha says that part is pretty much the base necessity to be a leader. Yes, Guru Paksha, but you'll be so surprised as to how few people realize that and bring it into practice. Why do you think employees face burnout? Why do you think, I don't know how many of you know or are aware that during COVID, especially here in India, and not as much maybe in other countries across the world, but definitely here in India and other parts of Asia, employees suddenly became available 24/7. No holds barred. The same people who you're saying, that part is pretty much the base necessity to be a leader. The same people in those managerial positions suddenly said, oh, wow, you're not going to be spending time traveling, so I can give you more work. Oh, wow, let me forget the fact that you have a family because I've forgotten that I have one. Let me forget that you have a family and let me call you at midnight and ask you for a status update on what's supposed to be happening. The number of employees who faced a burnout and the number of women who left the workforce because of this, because they had supervisors who were not cognizant of the fact that suddenly, especially in the Indian context, the woman's role had become literally 26 by 7, not even 24. So if I was a woman employee, I was working, I was taking care of the home, which I used to do earlier also. But hey, earlier at least I had the 8 hours to step out of home to go get work done, and I had domestic help. Now suddenly I had no domestic help because lockdown. So I was still supposed to and expected to continue as a woman. I was expected to continue to do the housework as well. The percentage of men who contributed was dismally low, according to whatever little bit of research was done at this time. Domestic violence went up. So, all these base things that we're speaking about need to be there for you to be a leader went flying out of the window. A large number of people went back to being managers. I can't tell you the number of leaders who reached out to me for coaching on I'm scared myself. I don't know how to handle my team. Now, those were the people who I say actually had leadership qualities, their ability to stand up and say, I'm scared and I still want to take care of my team. That's what makes a leader. My ability to delegate does not make me a leader alone. My ability to plan, my ability to get tasks done alone does not make me a good leader. So just bear that in mind. Rajan, could you elaborate on your question? Rajan wants to know being open with the team question. Now, would you just elaborate on that, please? And then I can maybe answer it a whole lot more powerfully and a whole lot more close to accurately. And in the meanwhile, I'm also going to, while Rajan types that in, I'm going to speak about uh, this gentleman named Ramcharan, thought leader, lots of books. I'm sure if you go and Google Ramcharan, you'll find like 100 things to read about Ramcharan. So I'm not going to go into that. Okay, before I start off with Ramcharan, Rajan says like being honest to your teams makes you a good leader. There are 2, 3 different things to think about that, Rajan. Of course, being honest and transparent is a very solidly accepted and expected value for any leader. Transparency, honesty, justness, fairness, these are all things that are expected of a leader, expected of a good leader. When we speak about as a leader, should I go and blurt out everything to my team members? So, for example, imagine I've just come out from a meeting, I'm a leader. In this case, I would actually be being a manager if this is how I behaved. Imagine I've just come from a meeting with the senior management and they've given me some very disturbing news and I'm disturbed. Now, I say honesty and transparency is one of my values. So I go and I blurt out, literally almost vomit out everything that I heard, thereby creating fear in my team. Is transparency right now a good idea? Absolutely not. What you want to do is you want to hold back the information right away. Does it, ask yourself the question, does this information need to be expended in this moment? No. If it's a disturbing piece of news, it needs to be processed. Its pros and cons need to be thought of. The ramifications, the consequences on your team needs to be thought of. How I'm going to communicate it needs to be thought of. And then you go and you communicate with transparency that here are some of the things that I have the answers to. Here are some of the things that I don't have the answers to. And we'll need to work on them together. That kind of transparency is required. I know during the time of COVID, a lot of managers, a lot of leaders struggled to give real answers because they themselves didn't have it. Their vulnerability and their ability to honestly turn around and say, you know what, I don't have the answers either, but we're working on them, and I promise you, you'll be taken care of one way or the other. I promise you, I'll do whatever I can in my power, in my authority to be able to do what's right by you. That kind of honesty and transparency is required. Gurupaksh, Shubham says, ma'am, I've heard of Ramcharan. He's super famous for something like something, just don't know. You're very sweet, Shubham. He is super famous for being a good thought leader in the areas of leadership, in the areas of management. He's disciplined working, execution, etc. He's written a plethora of very powerful books, some of which I've grown up reading. And when I say grown up, I don't just mean in age, I mean grown up as a leader, grown up as an individual, as a performer. Gurpaksha says, I believe transparency till it doesn't create panic in the team is fine. Absolutely correct. That's one of the other traits of being a good, powerful leader. Do I know what to say, how to say, when to say, who to say it to? And of course, how to say it. It's so important. So, transparency till it doesn't create panic, transparency till it doesn't create unnecessary rumors, transparency till it doesn't create an unnecessary divide between two sets of people. That's really, really required. Shubham says, can you suggest any books from him, ma'am? Yeah, there's something called Execution. There is something called The Leadership Pipeline. I'll look up some more names and I'll tell you. He's got a plethora of them. There's something called Rising Like the Phoenix or something, but I don't want to give you the wrong name without reading it. I will read it and I will give the names to you. Now, bringing it back into Ramcharan, since Shubham has helped us segue into talking about Ramcharan and his books and his work, he's written this book called The Leadership Pipeline. And in the leadership pipeline, essentially, he's spoken about that there are passages of leadership. So you start from being an individual contributor. From an individual contributor, you become a manager of people or managing others. From managing others, you go to managers. From managing managers, you go to managing groups, and so on and so on and so on. So I'm going to just talk about the fact that when you're making the transition from being a leader to a senior leader, also from the perspective of Ramcharan's passages, what really occurs over there. So now what happens is I've just moved from being an individual contributor to a manager. I've been given some skills, being told and being given the teeth to say your attendance is out and your performance is not doing so good, etc. So I'm still going ahead and I'm managing anywhere between two people to in a lot of cases, unfortunately, 80 to 200 people. I'm given that responsibility, right? An ideal number, according to me, is 20, no more than that, because at the end of the day, every single level of leader is still a human being, and they only have 24 hours in a day in which they have to achieve their own performance, grow and develop themselves, live their own personal lives, get their rest, take care of their health, well-being, and take care of their own people and the performance that gets driven through their own people. So, I have different thoughts on how many people should be led by one individual, but we won't go into that. But anyway, coming back to what I was speaking about, the second passage in the leadership pipeline is when I move from managing other people into managing managers. Now, it's easy for me to manage people because all I need to do is tell them, here's your task, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to work on, get it done. So it allows me, I have the luxury of just getting by on great performance. But the minute I move into managing managers, it becomes a whole ballgame altogether. Depending on the kind of processes, matrices that any organization has now, being someone who's managing a manager, now we're already beginning to transition into mid-level managerial positions, and then we'll move to the senior level managerial positions. As a manager or as a leader of managers, as a manager of managers, I now need to be responsible for you to grow and develop in such a way that you can manage your teams. One of the toughest challenges that comes up for people who are managing other managers is the need to bypass my own direct report and go to the people below. I've seen this happening a lot. In fact, I'm working with a client just now where I'm also hearing this, that there is a supervisory layer in between, which is people who are managing other people. There is that layer in between, But the person who's managing these managers doesn't respect this layer at all. And when I say respect, I don't mean as harsh to them or anything, but just doesn't respect the role over here and decides to go straight to the person below, to the individual contributors. Now, here's the risk of this transition faux pas or transition mistake. The risk over there is the people at the doing level will start to lose respect for their own direct supervisor, because obviously your own supervisor doesn't trust you, so your supervisor is coming to me. The supervisor begins to lose their confidence, starts to become complacent if they are of that mindset that, oh, somebody else is doing my job. Why do I need to do anything? I can sit back. And if there's a problem, I can always say, sir, you were handling it, or ma'am, you were handling it. So the challenge for the person who's transitioned into being a manager of managers is to hold back on their need to go directly to the source of performance or the source of conflict or the source of problem. The challenge is for them to develop their own direct report. So Bhiksha, your question is, if they do that, won't they end up losing their job? Oh no, that doesn't happen, because it's so easy. If you're asking about, will the first layer of manager, will they not lose their job? No, work is getting done, right? My supervisor has the need to show that they are in control or that they have a very good rapport with the people below. I'll sit back. I'm still getting my salary because my supervisor is making sure work is getting done. A lot of people play this game very, very well. They'll sit back on their haunches, they'll relax, they'll watch the boss doing what they're doing. Of course, they'll also feel a little frustrated and say, oh God, what am I even doing here? Some people whose ethics are really, really high, whose drive for performance, whose drive for excellence is really, really high, they'll get up, they'll quit the job, or they'll ask for a change of manager. Whatever, they'll do something to figure them out. By and large, people will say, good for me. I'm getting paid to sit back and enjoy the show. Rajin says it makes sense. Absolutely. The other big challenge, first I was talking about what drives the second level manager or the leader to do this to the first level manager. It's their need, of course, to be in control. It's their fear of not being proven as a good leader. So in their quest to be proven as a good leader, they're going ahead and doing all the things which will ensure that they get pulled up for not being a powerful leader at all, because now their job is also to grow and develop their own direct report, which they are not doing. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're actually creating a bad image and a bad environment for their own manager. Shubham says that is super lazy. I agree with that, Shubham, but it's also, by the way, for those kind of people, it's a very smart tactic. They don't really feel that it's required to do anything. They're getting a fat salary packet for doing nothing at all, right? So it works for them and it works in their favor. Is it a good thing to do? Absolutely not. So all of you, if you all are not yet in leadership positions, remember this conversation and remember that it's not the best thing to do. It's not going to serve you also in the long run, because you will end up feeling very, very bad about yourself. Your own self-worth, your own self-esteem will start to truly dip. So don't get into these kind of things. The other thing is that, the entire piece on coaching that this manager of managers needs to do, that doesn't happen, because they're so involved in getting everything done. They're so involved in the execution of things, in ensuring that results are met and ensuring that performance is done. They completely lose it. They completely lose the sight of the fact that they have to coach their people. I cannot tell you the number of times I have worked with leaders and I have coached them and I have asked them, what is your role really to drive performance? No, your role is to develop people, so your own direct reports, so they drive performance. Your role directly is not to drive performance any longer. Your role is to ensure that people have the environment that they are able to get performance driven from others. Your job is to make sure you're working on more strategic things. Your job is to make sure you are ensuring alignment between the organizational goals and the stuff that is being done on the ground. Your job is to make sure the communication that comes from senior management, from the executive, from the board, etc., and it reaches you. Your job is to ensure it gets percolated downwards in exactly the manner it was given to you, and doesn't get percolated with your own biases, your own fears and insecurities, and then it goes downward and becomes a complete mess. That those are the jobs, those are the requirements of a senior leader, of somebody who has that gumption. The next role is, or the next passage according to Ramcharan, is moving from managing managers to managing an entire function. Now, what are functions? Your sales, you've HR, you've got technology, you've got communication and marketing, you've got production, manufacturing, depending on the industry that you're in. There are so many different functions. Somebody who's managing an entire function now is responsible for so many different things, and this transition is super tough, because now, even if it looks like the difference is very negligible, now the challenges are so different, because suddenly I'm responsible for the strategy, suddenly for of my function, suddenly I'm responsible for making sure attrition is under control, so that I'm responsible for making sure my people are happy, I'm responsible for making sure there's team vitality, I'm responsible for making sure costs are taken care of, I'm responsible for making sure my balance sheet is of my particular function is in line with what was expected. I'm answerable for everyone, right from the last person down the line. I better have, and I'm responsible for having all the right information in my hand at all points of time. And maybe I've not been taught how to do that. I'm responsible for making sure that my function is successful, that it's achieving its goals and all. And that requires me to understand what's happening in the marketplace. It requires me to understand what's happening in my industry, what's happening, what are my competitors doing, and so on and so forth. And if, let's say, it's an internal facing function like HR, for example, what are the new things that are happening in the market? What are the new technologies that are coming up for HR, so that I can take care of my entire people pipeline, right from my own direct report all the way going upwards. So many different challenges. And now this requires a whole different mindset as a leader. This requires a whole different take on planning and organizing. This requires a whole different take on assertive communication. Because when I was a first time manager, I had all the time in the world, or I was supposed to have all the time in the world to be able to help my people solve their problems. Then when I became a manager managing managers, or when I became a leader who was managing other managers, then my role was to think a little bit lateral and say, okay, if I have 4 managers working under me and I have only one position upwards, how am I going to move this person upwards? Which one of them am I going to move? Who needs what skills, and so on and so forth? And now suddenly it's like I need to work within, like if I'm HR, I need to work with the training team. I need to work with the compensation and benefits team. Sorry, comp and ben just came out very naturally. So there are so many other teams that I need to work with, and I need to make sure they are all functioning properly. So a lot of times people who move into really, positionally senior leadership roles, they suddenly start to say, oh my God, I can't breathe. I have no time to sleep. My hypertension has gone up. I have so many challenges. I have teams conflicting with each other. My own teams are working in silos and they're not talking to each other. So silos are my own, my own little bubble that I'm working in. And I'm not talking to my other team. So for example, does the training team need to know what the budget is? Of course, they need to know. Does the team need to know what are some of the challenges that the staffing team is facing? In, let's say the training team is doing the induction and they had an induction plan, but the recruitment team was not able to kind of hire the right number of people required because the people were not available. The two teams are not talking to each other. Let's say there's an onboarding team, and that onboarding team is not talking to the recruitment team, is not talking to the training team, is not talking to the organizational development team. So now the senior leader's job is, how do I make sure that all my sub teams are talking to each other? Rajan is saying, yeah, it cancels out. Depression gets cancelled out because of money. Rajan, I wish. On a more serious note, if money was what kind of would cancel out depression, people like Robin Williams wouldn't commit suicide, right? So no, money definitely doesn't cancel out depression. You're talking about money may cancel out frustration related to I have to do so much work. But then, hey, I'm getting this like massively fat pay package. I better be doing what I need to do. Sure. But does it cancel depression? No. So like mental health is one thing that I don't take lightly. Other stuff I'm usually very light about, but mental well-being, no, slightly difficult to be blasé about that. Okay, now moving. This is just a function, right? Next one is, and I'm kind of racing against time, so I'm going to speak about. I know, Rajan. I'm just saying that it's a little difficult. No, you don't have to be sorry, Rajan. Please don't be. I'm just telling you my take on it. That yeah, I'm just a little sensitive about mental well-being. So coming back, we're talking about the whole passage now from being a functional manager to being a business manager. What is the difference between a functional and a business manager? A business manager is also doing these things, the same things that the functional manager was doing. Now, there is a responsibility for the bottom line. Let me give you some example. Okay, let's say you're a business manager in PepsiCo, and PepsiCo has its different arms. There's beverages, there's foods, there's 500 other things. Or Nestle, same thing. There's environmental, ecological balance. There's something to that effect. There's foods, there's health and nutrition, there's beverages, there's teas, coffees, all of that good stuff. There's curd. There are so many different business units, right? Now, the business manager, a functional manager was someone who was taking care of the sales team or taking care of the HR team or finance or technology, etc., etc. Or was a general manager if the if the industry is manufacturing, they were a general manager of a plant. Now you're transitioning to business manager. Reliance has plans for petroleum. Reliance has plans for polychemicals and so on and so forth. So I'll have a business if I'm a Reliance head, if I'm Mukesh Ambani, then I will have a business manager for my technology arm. I will have a business manager for my telecom arm. I will have a business manager, and so on and so on and so on for all the arms that my business has. So of course, the size, the scale, the nature of the organization will also matter on how many passages there are or how many different layers there are. A business manager, bringing back, is a very mission critical role. I need to be able to manage the mission of the organization. I need to be able to lead my team so as to ensure the vision, the mission are being aligned and being met. I'm responsible for the moolah. I'm responsible for the money that comes in. I'm responsible for the profit and loss. I, as a senior leader, as a business manager, I will have a lot of autonomy to be able to take a lot of my own decisions. I'm kind of like the CEO, depending again on the conglomerate, the scale and the size of the organization. I could be the CEO, I could just be a business manager. Don't get lost in titles right now. But it's a role that requires me to be able to see the link between efforts and the bottom line, to make sure that there is a link between people and what we're doing with the purpose. There are 4 P's. There's people, profits, planet, and purpose. As a business manager, my role is to ensure that my people below me, my direct reports, my functions, they're all working towards these 4. Whether or not my organization has formally adopted these 4 P's, or we're just still working towards achieving these 4 P's, every organization is working towards at least bare minimum 2 of these 4 P's. People and profits, of course. Some will take care of the planet also, like Nestle, like Pepsi. Some will take care of the purpose as well. Again, same, both of these 2 organizations will take care of all these 4 P's that happen. But anyway, coming back now, being a business manager, usually what happens is I'm expected to hit the ground running. I did a great job when I started out as an individual contributor. I moved up the ranks, moved up the ranks, moved up the ranks, moved up the ranks. And now I'm suddenly expected to take care of this entire thing. Very few of them, in most organizations, we will give people at least anywhere between 3 months to a year to get accustomed to their job, to get to know the lay of the land, to build their relationships with people, to create trust. People in the business manager position are now. Right now is what you need to do. We're paying you a fat salary packet. We've placed the reputation, the longevity, the strength. We've placed our organization in your hands. What do you mean by you need a year to kind of hit the ground running? What do you mean you need 3 months? Now we need to see your results now. Indra Nooyi is very famously, she has said that most CEOs, most business managers, if I correlate CEOs and business managers to this, come in to create a mark for themselves, and therefore one of the quickest ways to create that mark, because that level is not given the luxury of taking their time to reset things. So what they do is they come and they completely negate maximum of the work of the last person, and they start to do their own stuff because, hey, I have to make a mark. So I have to discredit the work that the other guy did. Mostly. I'm not saying every single organization and every single CEO or business manager is like that. But this is what Indra Nooyi has said, and she's experienced that, and it's been written in books, etc. also about it. Gurupaksha says she's my idol. I agree with that. She is a great woman. I started to write a book on her, and then I kind of gave up in between. I think I'll pick it up again because she is such a living example for so many of us. I think not just for women, but also for men alike. She is very famously, been in a position where I'm just going to share an example, because I'm also now telling you one of the roles of what a business manager needs to do, and the difference between a functional manager and a business manager. And I'm right now, when I'm talking about a business manager, by the way, I'm also going to talk about the next and the last passage of business manager to group manager, because when we go into a group manager, that's really a conglomerate. Maybe a conversation about some other time, not today. So the role of the business manager, not just to drive people, right, not just to drive profits, right, and to maintain the balance sheet and all, has to look after people, has to look after the planet, has to make sure strategies, has to make sure the vision, the mission, the strategy, the goals, everything is aligned towards taking care of people, profits, planet, and purpose. Now, along with that, what I started with speaking about was what she did when she took over. At a certain point of time, her teams had been working really, really hard. So she actually sat down and she wrote out letters to the parents of her direct reports. And the parents were so touched, they were so proud that they would speak to their own children. When their children would call, they would ask their own child, so how's Indra? Like, Indra was their best friend, sitting right next to her and right next to the parents and eating lunch with them every second week. But that's the kind of bond. Yes, Shubham, that was super sweet and it was super powerful. You know how it is, like, and she says it herself, that when we're in school, we get a report card. We have parents teachers meetings where children who've done well, their parents feel so proud about hearing what their child has done. But the minute we grow up and we step into the corporate world, who's writing to my parents and telling me, you know what, your child did a good job? And her letter to them was actually, thank you for ensuring that your spouse or your child is spending and doing such a great job here. You're taking care of things at home, and they're taking care of PepsiCo here and helping me take care of the planet. That is the role of a senior leader. Your ability. Gurupaksha is saying she did actual groundwork, unlike any other CEO in PepsiCo, because of which the sales skyrocketed. Absolutely, you must. I promise you, I'm not getting a commission from her. You must read her biography, the latest one. Jesus Christ, I've read it and I can't remember the name. I will remember it and I will share it with you guys. I can't believe it. I've read it and I've reread it. I've not just read it, I've read it, reread it, made my notes in the margin. And there are times when I've gone off to sleep reading that book and saying, what a great woman. So anyway, coming back, that's the role of a business manager. Are you motivating people? Are you enthusing people? Are you setting legacy systems in place which will make sure that the organization is running to longevity? It's becoming a great organization that people down the line, all the way down the line, are receiving the same information, the same communication, because that's the culture you have encouraged to be built. Right upwards from manager of managers, I feel one of the biggest roles of any leader is to start making sure they have their ear to the ground and are listening to what is happening in the informal culture of the organization, so they are able to inform the formal culture of the organization. So important. My Life in Full. Thank you so much, Guru Paksha. That was good. Yes, that is the book. My Life in Full. And it's a beautiful book. So, coming back, the whole thing about making these, knowing of these transitions is what will help you start making them. Knowing that as I keep going higher and higher in the hierarchical ladder of the organization, the expectations from my role are different. And when you start to know that, you start to work on your skills, you start to work on your mindset, and so on and so forth. There are, of course, a few mistakes that we do when we are moving into these kind of roles, etc. The first thing we do is we don't take information, we jump headlong into the work that we do, because our need to prove ourselves is so strong that we don't remember the basic tenets: observe, absorb, ask. We jump directly into let me do because I have to prove myself. That's one of the challenges. And so when you are going ahead and whenever you reach that layer, and anyone who's not here live and you're listening to this at some point in the future, near or otherwise, and you're already a leader who's looking at transitioning into into truly being a senior leader, not just positionally being a senior leader, but truly being someone who coaches, who mentors, who lends a listening ear, who creates systems, who looks at where the problem areas are and encourages the environment around them to plug those problem areas. If you truly want to be a leader like that, your power of observation, your skill of listening, your empathy and emotional intelligence, all of these are going to go a super long way in you actually being able to make that huge amount of difference that is so deeply required in any senior leader and in any organization. So I'm going to wait for a moment. I have spoken non-stop. So if there are any questions, please let me know, and then I'll talk to you about the final 2, 3 things that I'd like to speak about. Any questions I can answer. And in the meanwhile, as I wait for you to look at that, I'm just going to give you some of Ramcharan's books. If you haven't Googled them already. Okay, let's see. Ramcharan. One is, of course, the leadership pipeline. I've spoken to you about that. I've spoken to you about execution. There's something called What the CEO Wants You to Know. That'll be a great book for you guys to read, by the way, if you're just starting out in your careers, early on in your careers, or even if you're still just students. There's another one called What the Customer Wants You to Know. I did not know about this one, but it'll be a good one to know if you're the CEO. Boards that deliver, again, when you come to like a um, really senior level position. I think this is a book that I need to start reading now. Boards that deliver. I'm a member of a board. There's something called Rethinking Competitive Advantage, Confronting Reality, Doing What Matters to Get Things Right. By the way, this one is one that you might want to read already if you're students. Confronting Reality, Doing What Matters to Get Things Right. It's a co-written book, Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. He has also contributed to a book called First Break All the Rules, What the CEO Really Wants to Hear, New Rules of Business. There's 100 different books. But the one that I'd like you to start with is definitely you can start reading Execution, start reading the Leadership Pipeline, start reading this one that I spoke about, Confronting Reality. Rajan says, ma'am, what would you recommend for people with social anxiety to be better managers or leaders? Rajan, I think one of the things I would say is definitely look at getting coached. There's nothing wrong in being coached. There's nothing wrong in seeking help, professional, or I wouldn't say do it otherwise, but definitely there's no harm in seeking support because anxiety is a real thing and the struggle is truly real. Social anxiety, even more, because if you want to be a good leader, you need to have a little bit of social presence, social intelligence, as Daniel Goleman calls it. You need to be able to interact with people. You need to be able to see the world from their perspective. I'm happy to talk to you if you'd like to talk to me, and then, off the session, and you're more than welcome to then take your next course of action. If you're asking for yourself, if you're not asking for yourself, and you're generally asking a question, the answer is still the same. For leaders to be able to truly do their job, to truly do justice to their roles and to themselves, It's so important to get coached. I always tell people who are kind of sitting on the fence about coaching, and also when I'm mentoring young coaches, I tell them, look, I've been coaching for 20 years now, and I still have 3 coaches for myself. Different things, different coaches. What's the harm in getting coached? If we could do things by ourselves, if we could handle everything by ourselves, the world would be a completely different place, wouldn't it now? So, just moving from there, I don't see any further questions. Let me just double check. Is there a question coming up somewhere? No. So then let's take a look at this. If you want to truly, truly move into being a senior leader, a strong, good, powerful leader, here are some things that you want to do. You want to make sure that you are creating a coaching and a mentoring culture for your people. Not just a culture, of course, making sure the culture will happen because of this, but making sure that they have the right opportunities, they have the right fitment in terms of the mentoring coaching relationship. Please make sure that as a leader, you are setting this up for your people and you're leading by example on that. Make sure you're leading by example on emotional intelligence and empathy. So, so important. I cannot emphasize the importance of that more. If you do nothing else, if you do absolutely nothing else, and you just the first thing that you start to do is to start building a culture of empathy, I'm promising you, your own performance levels will skyrocket. People will be willing to do things for you. There's an adage, people do things for people they like. And people like you if you understand them from their perspective. When you hear them out, when you truly listen to the unsaid that they are dealing with, when you help them find the solutions to their own problems, people will like you then. And when they like you, they will do more stuff for you than you can even begin to imagine. So make sure that you are creating a mentoring coaching relationship within leadership roles itself. One of the biggest pain points for most organizations is that, we've thrown you into a leadership position. Now go do what needs to be done, sink or swim. Very few people will go back to their own HR. Very few people will go back to their own leadership and say, hey, I need support, I need training, I need help. The other thing, if you truly want to be a great leader, is allow them the space to fail and don't punish them for their failure. A place where I'm working right now, and I'm looking at setting up a systems change in terms of people. One of the biggest things is people are not willing to take responsibility of a higher nature, because they say that if I have to take responsibility of a higher nature, it means I will bypass my own supervisor, which means that I will have to work with their supervisor. I'm not willing to do that. The environment is not safe. I've seen my own supervisor get punished for mistakes. Allow people to fail. Remember that. My father taught me how to fail. He said it was okay to fail. He said it was safe to fail when I was sitting down to write my first year economics exam, because I was very poor in economics. I used to hate the subject at that point of time in school. And just before I had to write my first year exam, I panicked like how in those days we didn't have mobile phones. So I ran down from the 4th floor of my exam center to the canteen, and I called my father on the landline, crying, howling on the phone. And I'm sure I gave him a really, really scary time. And he asked me, what happened? Somehow his voice got through to me and he said, what happened? I'm going to fail, Baba. I was howling, right? And my father, he must have heaved a sigh of relief. And he turns around and he says to me at that time, so what? Do you think I'm going to kill you? Do you think mom's going to stop loving you? Do you think we'll throw you out of the house? Go fail if you need to. Write the exam again. It doesn't matter. Right now, go and put in your best. You'll be fine. Even if you fail, we'll still continue to love you. I topped my exam, my class. I topped my class. Everything that I had studied, and it was the only class, by the way, I studied. I bunked every other class. I should let you know that. I'm doing just fine because my father told me it was okay to fail. And luckily, I learned that. And that's how I've worked with my people. I've learned the hard way, of course, but that's how I work with my people today. Anyone in my team, if they make a mistake, they actually don't feel scared coming and telling me, ma'am, I made a mistake. Most of them call me Shalu. There are just these two little things who call me ma'am. But anyway, so are you creating the space for people to fail? And then finally, rewards and recognitions. You'll still have your HR teams kind of going ahead and defining the rewards for you. It's the recognition that matters. A pat on the back. Oh, well done. Like a genuinely felt well done, even if it's said in private, although in public is always great, of course. Who doesn't want to be praised in public? But even a private, well done, I really appreciate the work that you do. Any kind of recognition that you make, by the way, which is important for the person. Maybe one of the sessions I'll do can be on Maslow, or the the various theories of motivation. Identify what is of value to your people, identify what is of importance to your people, and then motivate from, recognize them from there. Do remember, as a leader, you cannot motivate another person. You can only create the environment, create the circumstances for them to feel motivated and inspired. You can't beat a person into motivation. Remember that. So when you use theories like Maslow, you use theories like David McClelland, and so on and so forth. Please remember, all you're doing is creating the environment for the other person to feel nurtured, to feel motivated, to feel inspired. That's the role, the job of a leader, to make sure that people are happy enough to be putting in their absolute and very best. That impression was very funny, the one that I was crying in. Yeah. I'm just going to read on the chat. Rajan says, I was a bit shy, but things got better after college, but my brother still has problems. I'm very happy to talk to your brother, Rajan. I will just put in my number, my contact details in the chat if I can. I can't seem to chat. So, Team Creator, if you're still around, if you could just please put in my details, that would help. I don't seem to have a respond to chat button field after I relogged in. Subiksha says that was very far. No, Shubham's question is, but what if they have done something irrevocable? Should they still not be punished? What is irrevocable? Of course, so Shubham, in any organization, there are checks and balances in place. So if I have gone ahead and I've made a massive blunder, but that massive blunder is contained to me and my role and my tasks, do I need to be punished? No. Do I need to be penalized? No. Do I need to be coached and trained? Yeah, of course. Do I need to be spoken to? Yeah, absolutely. The minute the impact of my mistake starts to grow larger, the minute the impact starts to grow deeper, which means there's a financial impact, there is an impact on a large number of people, there is an impact on the reputation of the organization, there is an impact on the well-being of the organization, and therefore all the number of people that are employed over there, that's when the employee must be definitely spoken to, and definitely the checks and balances will kick into place. Every organization has its severity levels. So there's a possibility that I have created a blunder at a severity level 1, which is still impacting a lot of people, but it's a level 1 severity blunder. I will be given feedback. I will maybe be put back into training. Let's say it's I'm talking about on a level of 1 to 5. I only have a minute and a half remaining and Instagram will go. Okay, never mind. Let's say I'm at level 3 of severity and I'm just skipping level 2, but level 3 severity, there is a distinct possibility that I'll get pulled by some senior management and an interrogation and not interrogation, an investigation will be done on what happened, what was the root cause, why did it happen, why did the mistake happen, what was my contribution, what was somebody else's contribution, and so on and so forth. So every organization has its own levels of checks and balances, severity levels, and so on and so forth. As a leader, should you be going and turning people's ears and saying, you did this, it's your fault? No, please don't do it. In fact, as a leader, your role is to be able to absorb these gentle blunders that happen and not kind of go racing and running to the management and say, oh, you know what, Shalu did this. It's only when Shalu makes a blunder which is impacting the entire organization, that's when you should be worried about what should be done. Should you punish still then? No, sorry. Penalize, maybe. Punish, no. You're not a school teacher. Gurpaksha says that, thank you, Team Creator. Gurupaksha says, ma'am, I really like how much knowledge you have with authors. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love to read. If you look at my live video has ended, so that's fine. If you look at my room, and someday maybe I'll show you a picture, my rooms across my house, they're all filled with books. In fact, I have a space on my stairs which are going up to the roof, and I've kind of borrowed that space from from all the people who have to go up and down, the domestic staff and my parents and all. And I've said, can I please use these corners right next to the wall to keep my books? So I love to read Subeksha. I love to read Guru Paksha. So yeah. Shubham says, for real, ma'am, I would never remember these many names. Shubham, that's okay. Look at my white hair. I have been working for 26 years. When you've done 26 years, call me and tell me, ma'am, I remember these names. You'll be just fine. That's all good. Don't worry about it. All right. Thank you so very much. It's as usual, it's been wonderful. I'm very, very passionate about these topics. As you can see, I go non-stop. I can talk hours on an end about them. And thank you for asking me your questions, because that's what truly makes the conversation richer. Otherwise, it becomes bookish knowledge, right? Although, thankfully, what I'm sharing with you, I'm sharing also from a lot of experience, definitely from reading all these books that I've named, but also from a lot of experience that I've been through myself, in my growth as a leader, but also as a consultant. I've been consulting for the past 16 years. That makes me very old. I've been consulting for the past 16 years. And I've been very lucky to have worked with a lot of very good names and have been exposed to a lot of very good leaders, and equally a lot of very, very, you have scope for improvement ones. I'm glad to be able to share that with you. Thank you very much. It was a very, very good chat with all of you with your questions. Thank you so much. Rajan, sorry if I took your joke a little seriously. And please don't hesitate to reach out. Team Creator has left my number there. Thank you so much. Have a good Saturday evening. Thank you for being here to learn on Saturday, and enjoy your weekend. I will see you guys next week. Bye bye. Thank you, Rajan. You're so very welcome. I am going to end the meeting, otherwise, I'll keep talking. Bye bye.